Welcome to AI Paper Podcasts. Today we're going to dig into a really fascinating paper. It's called Semantic Structure in Large Language Model Embeddings, and it's by Austin C. Kozlowski, Callan Day, and Andre Boudelein. So just to give you the core idea up front, this paper reveals something pretty surprising. You know those super complex, high-dimensional embedding spaces in LLMs? Well, it turns out their semantic representations actually boil down to a much simpler, low-dimensional structure.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. Concepts we humans use, like good, bad, or strong, weak, well, in LLM embeddings, they effectively map onto a three-dimensional subspace. And this subspace looks strikingly similar to how human cognition organizes, meaning think evaluation, potency, and activity.
Exactly. And what's really crucial here, especially for, AI researchers and engineers listening, is that this isn't just some academic curiosity.
Not at all. The paper demonstrates, pretty rigorously I'd say, that this entanglement of features, the way they're linked, means steering one feature predictably causes these off-target effects on others that are geometrically aligned with it.
Right, so we're moving past thinking of these interactions as just random noise.
Precisely. It gives us a more quantifiable handle on how these changes actually propagate through the model.
And this insight, well, it has huge implications for building safer, more controllable AI. It kind of challenges that assumption that off-target effects are always just bugs we need to fix.
Right. What if this non-orthogonality, this entanglement, is actually a feature, a natural result of how LLMs generalize meaning?
Then our whole approach to control needs to adapt, doesn't it?
It does. Instead of just trying to force everything to be independent, maybe we can leverage these alignments, predict them, perhaps even use them to guide the model more effectively. It opens up new paths for safety and interpretability, too.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly. At its heart, this research tackles a question that I think a lot of us in the field grapple with. Do LLMs, with their specific architectures, their unique training data, do they really build internal representations that mirror human thinking? Or is how they structure meaning fundamentally different?
It's a big question, and the paper lays out the two main arguments really well. On one side, you could argue that since LLMs learn from massive amounts of human language, basically our collective thoughts written down, they should end up mirroring human cognitive structures.
Makes sense.
But the other side is compelling too. LLMs have very different architectures than brains. The data they see isn't like our sensory experience, and their main job is next token prediction. So maybe their internal representations are just fundamentally different beasts.
It's not just about satisfying scientific curiosity, though, is it?
No, definitely not. Understanding how meaning is actually represented inside these models is directly useful. Think about model safety, auditing, controlling outputs. If we really understand the map of meaning inside an LLM, we get much better tools for building reliable AI.
And what's fascinating is how this connects back to older research in social psychology.
Absolutely. It builds on decades of work showing that when humans rate words on different scales, like how soft things often feel kind or strong things feel big, these complex ratings can actually be boiled down.
Reduced to a simpler form.
Exactly. To a low-dimensional structure without losing much information. It's like our brains naturally compress semantic meaning into core components.
So tell us about that core structure from the human side.
Well, this goes way back to the Semantic Differential work in the 1950s. Researchers asked people to rate concepts on scales like good, bad, strong, weak, active, passive.
Okay.
And consistently, they found three main underlying dimensions that explained most of the variation. These are usually called evaluation, basically, good versus bad, potency, strong versus weak, and activity moving or dynamic versus stationary or static.
EPA. Evaluation, potency, activity.
That's the classic trio. And what's really convincing is that other lines of research found similar things, like work on stereotypes found warmth and competence dimensions. Affect research found valence, arousal, and dominance.
So it's not just a one-off finding.
Not at all. It suggests these dimensions are pretty robust, maybe even universal ways humans structure meaning. Deeply ingrained.
Okay, so that's the human benchmark, this low-dimensional EPA structure. Now, how does this relate to LLM embeddings? The paper focuses on the initial embeddings, right?
Yes, that's a key point. They look at the vectors assigned to tokens before they go through all the complex transformer layers. The idea is that in this initial space, the directions might be more clearly linked to interpretable concepts.
A clearer view before things get too mixed up.
Sort of.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the idea of superposition in neural networks. It's how these networks manage to represent loads of different concepts or features in a space that actually has fewer dimensions than the number of features.
So features share space.
Yeah, instead of one neuron per feature, features are represented by directions or maybe regions in this high-dimensional space. They're distributed patterns, reused and combined for different concepts.
Now here's where the paper offers a really critical insight, kind of pushing back on a common view. Superposition is often talked about as packing features efficiently, maybe with some minimal, almost random interference. But this paper, drawing on older work, suggests the non-orthogonality, the overlap, can be meaningful.
Exactly. That the alignment between features isn't just noise, it actually reflects their real semantic relationship.
Like related concepts are intentionally placed closer together in the space.
Precisely. And this idea, as you said, isn't brand new. Hinton, McClelland, and Rumelhart argued way back that forcing features to be perfectly orthogonal, especially if they're meaningfully related, would actually kill off generalization.
How so?
Because it's the shared structure, the non-orthogonality, that allows the model to generalize. If dog and cat share some underlying pet or mammal features in the representation, the model can generalize knowledge between them, make them orthogonal, and you lose that automatic connection.
So non-orthogonality as a feature, not a bug.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
A fundamental property that enables rich representations. And this view contrasts with some other approaches in, say, interpretability or control.
Like trying to force orthogonality.
Yeah, techniques like whitening operations, which try to decorrelate features to reduce interference. This paper suggests, well, maybe doing that actually distorts the true semantic structure if the features are supposed to be related. You might be throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, interesting tension there. So how did they actually test all this? How did they connect the human semantic map to the LLM embedding space?
Their methodology was quite neat, actually. They used three main types of data. First, the human survey data, 1,750 people, rating 301 words on 28 different semantic scales, like kind, cruel, wise, foolish.
Okay, the human ground truth.
Then, the LLM side. They looked at token embeddings from several models, Gemma 3 at different sizes, Llama 3, Quen 2.5. Big range there.
And the third data type.
They also got LLMs to perform a task mimicking the human survey, using next token probabilities to get the LLM's rating for a word on a scale. This allowed for a more direct comparison.
Clever. So how did they extract these semantic directions, like kind, cruel, from the raw embeddings?
They used a pretty standard technique. For a given feature, say kind, cruel, they took pairs of antonyms. They found the embedding vector for kind, subtracted the vector for cruel, normalized it, and did this for several related antonym pairs. Then they averaged these difference vectors.
Okay, so that gives you a single vector representing the kind to cruel direction in the embedding space.
Exactly. You get a specific direction for each of the 28 semantic features.
And then how do they measure how much a specific word, like flower, aligns with that direction?
They used cosine similarity. Basically, they projected the word's embedding vector onto the feature direction vector. A high cosine similarity means the word strongly aligns with that semantic pole, like flower projecting strongly onto beautiful.
Right, it gives you a score for each word on each semantic scale, derived directly from the LLM's internal geometry.
Precisely.
And then the intervention experiment that sounds crucial for showing causality.
It really is. What they did was they take a word, let's use their example, winter. They'd slightly nudge its embedding vector in a specific semantic direction, say, towards beautiful.
Okay, artificially making winter seem more beautiful to the model.
Exactly. Then they measured the effect of that nudge on other semantic associations using the next token probability task. So after making winter more beautiful, does the model now rate winter as slightly more kind or cruel?
Ah, so you can see if pushing one semantic lever pulls another one.
Yes, it directly tests if these features are causally entangled. Does changing the beauty score predictably change the kindness score, for instance?
Okay, methodology clear. Let's get to the findings. This is where it gets really interesting, right?
Absolutely. First off, they found really strong correlations between the human survey ratings and the LLM embedding projections for the same features.
How strong?
Pearson correlations were typically between 0.3 and 0.7. That's a very solid validation that these LLM embeddings are genuinely capturing human-like semantic associations.
Wow, okay. So the models aren't just learning patterns. They're learning patterns that align with our own understanding of meaning.
It certainly looks that way. And this was reinforced by the whitening experiment. Remember how whitening tries to force features to be orthogonal?
Yeah, to reduce interference?
Well, when they applied that transformation to the LLM embeddings, it actually reduced the correlation with the human ratings by about 20% on average.
So making the features independent made them less like human judgments.
Exactly, which strongly supports their hypothesis. The mild non-orthogonality, the entanglement that's naturally there, isn't just noise. It seems to be a faithful reflection of the real semantic structure, the way concepts are actually related in human thought. Trying to erase it loses something important.
That's a powerful finding. What about the structure within the LLM embeddings themselves? Did the relationships between features also mirror the human data?
Yes, remarkably so. They calculated correlation matrices showing how all 28 semantic features related to each other based purely on the LLM projections. And they found these LLM correlation matrices were highly correlated with the equivalent matrix derived from the human survey data. The correlation was about 0.82 for the words in the survey, and still 0.73 even when looking at a much larger vocabulary.
So the overall shape of the semantic space is very similar.
Very similar. And they took it one step further. They looked directly at the geometric alignment, the cosine similarity between the feature direction vectors themselves. Like, how aligned is the kind, cruel vector with the soft, hard vector in the embedding space?
Yeah.
That geometric alignment also correlated very highly, around 0.76, with the corresponding relationships in the human survey data. So the actual geometry of the LLM's feature space encodes human-like semantic connections.
Okay, so strong alignment with human data, and the internal structure looks similar. What about the dimensionality? Did the LLM features also collapse into that low-dimensional structure like the human EPA?
Yes, they did. Using principal component analysis, PCA, they found that just like the human data, the 28 semantic features in the LLM embeddings could be effectively compressed into just 3 dimensions.
Only 3.
Primarily 3. Now, in the human data, those 3 dimensions explained a bit more of the variance, but even in the LLMs, the first 3 components captured a really substantial chunk, between 40% and 55% of the total variance. That's way, way more than you'd expect if the features were just randomly oriented.
So strong evidence for low-dimensional structure in LLMs too. Were the dimensions the same as the human EPA?
This is where it gets nuanced. The human data, as expected, clearly showed evaluation, potency, and activity. The GEMMA models, well, they showed something similar but not identical. Component 1 was clearly evaluation good, bad across the board, very stable. But component 2 wasn't quite potency. It seemed more like maybe vibrancy. It loaded heavily on scales like blank, colorful, bland, savory. Think plain versus spicy.
Interesting. And the third component?
That one was closer to activity. It captured features like excited, calm, fast, slow, so kind of rapid versus calm.
So similar core dimensions, but maybe slightly different flavors, like vibrancy instead of pure potency.
Exactly. It hints that while the overall structure is mirrored, the specific training data and objective predicting text might lead the LLM to emphasize slightly different facets of meaning, maybe more related to perceptual richness or descriptive intensity. Still low-dimensional, but the axes have slightly different labels, you could say.
But the big picture is clear. LLMs seem to be organizing meaning in a way that's surprisingly fundamentally similar to how humans do it. Low-dimensional, structured, entangled.
Precisely.
Which brings us back to those practical consequences, especially the off-target effects during steering.
Right. The study delivered a really key finding here. They showed a strong linear relationship between the geometric alignment, that cosine similarity of 2 feature vectors, and the actual size of the off-target effect when intervening on one of them.
So the closer 2 feature directions are in the embedding space.
The more strongly steering one will affect the other. And is proportional. If feature A is highly aligned with feature B, nudging A towards positive will predictably nudge B towards positive by a corresponding amount.
So these side effects aren't random anymore. They're predictable based on the geometry.
Exactly. They're systematic, quantifiable consequences of the underlying semantic structure. This predictability is huge because it means we can potentially anticipate these effects, maybe even account for them or leverage them.
And these effects weren't trivial.
Not at all. They reported effects of up to 10 percentage points in the smaller models, which is quite substantial. And crucially, this pattern held up across different model families, GEMMA, Llama, Quen, and different model sizes.
That consistency is key. It suggests that this isn't some quirk of one model, but a more fundamental property of how these LLMs represent meaning.
I think so. It gives us a much more grounded, predictable understanding of both intended and unintended consequences when we try to steer model behavior.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main takeaways from this deep dive. We've seen compelling evidence that LLM representations, despite their complexity, have this underlying low-dimensional structure.
And that structure is semantically entangled in predictable ways that closely mirror human cognitive organization, the EPA structure, more or less.
Right. And the implications for AI safety and control seem pretty significant.
I think they are. Finding this low dimensionality is actually quite encouraging for technical AI safety. If many of the features we care about, safety, fairness, honesty, maybe even complex biases like us versus them, all reside within a shared, manageable, low-dimensional space.
It makes the problem seem less daunting.
Potentially, yes. Instead of chasing countless individual features or neurons, maybe we can understand and intervene on these core underlying dimensions. It could simplify auditing, bias detection, and control efforts significantly. We might be able to steer models more effectively towards desired behaviors by understanding this shared semantic subspace.
It's about understanding the map, not just individual locations.
Exactly. This study is a really important step towards mapping the geometry of the feature space, understanding how features relate to each other. That relational understanding is critical for getting a full picture of how LLMs work internally, how they might change their representations depending on the context.
And it represents a bit of a paradigm shift, wouldn't you say? Moving away from thinking of superposition or feature overlap as just noise or a necessary evil.
Towards seeing that meaningful non-orthogonality, this entanglement, might actually be fundamental to how LLMs achieve such rich, generalized representations. It's perhaps how they capture the complex relational nature of the world, much like we do.
It definitely pushes us to think more holistically, not just about isolated features, but about the entire conceptual landscape within the model. How meaning itself is constructed through these relationships.
It's like understanding that human knowledge isn't just a list of facts, but a network of interconnected concepts. LLMs might be building similar networks.
So, for you listening, maybe think about what this predictable entanglement means for your own work. If you're involved in feature steering or model control, how does knowing about these systematic off-target effects change your approach?
Could understanding these conceptual maps lead to better interpretability tools or more robust ways to control AI behavior?
And perhaps, looking further ahead, could we even design models based on this understanding, aiming to build AI that more inherently reflects human-like semantic structures from the ground up? Lots to think about.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive on AI paper podcasts. As always, you can find a link to the paper itself in our show notes if you want to explore all the details.
Absolutely. It's a really thought-provoking piece of work, a definite step towards demystifying LLM internals and building more reliable AI systems.